Good morning or afternoon to all of you, depending upon where you are. We'll be beginning the presentation in just about 1 minute. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm David Doyle with Kwixand Solutions. For those of you who don't already know us, Kwixand Solutions is a silver Microsoft Dynamics 365 partner based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We guide businesses across Canada and the US through all phases of their ERP, CRM, and cloud transformations. For us, successful digital transformation is much more than just implementing a software solution. It's about helping a company optimize its processes and maximize the return on investment. We dive deep to learn what makes your business unique and deliver solutions and strategies tailored specifically for your business. We're extremely happy today to be able to have our partners, Mark Apicella and Matthew Fisher from Insight Software, joining us to present a very powerful and sophisticated planning, budgeting, and forecasting solution that is fully integrated with Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. We welcome your questions anytime during the webinar, and you can just ask them by typing them in the Q&A box on your screen. We'll make sure we go over them all at the end of the presentation. So at this point, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Mark.
All right, thank you very much, David, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules to learn a little bit more about Bizview. Today's webinar, Bizview, take control of your forecasting and budgeting. And before we start, can you see I have my camera turned on? Did that broadcast properly? Maybe David can answer that.
Yep, I can see your slide deck.
Perfect.
And your
All right,
camera.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. All right, so today we'll go over our agenda. So we're going to start off with an introduction, introduce the presenters as well as Insight Software. We'll go over some market challenges and then discuss how we can address those market challenges with Bizview. And then we'll dive into the overview and demo. And finally, we'll have next steps. And as David mentioned, have time for Q&A at the end. So as David said, my name is Mark Apicella. I'm a channel manager here at Insight Software. I work closely with our Microsoft Dynamics partners and clients across Canada to help evaluate reporting, analytics, and budgeting applications. You all know David Doyle. He's with Kwixand, and very gracious of him to let us join you all today to talk to you. And also we have Matthew Fisher. He's our senior solutions engineer, and he advises our Dynamics users on reporting, analytics, and budgeting solutions to maximize their ROI and for their ERP investments. Matthew is Microsoft certified and has over 12 years experience in the Microsoft community, from everything from BI configuration to cloud platform implementations of IT infrastructure. So a little bit about Insight Software. Insight Software solutions are purpose-built to help the office of the CFO connect and make sense of their data. Our goal is to tackle the complicated task of getting your enterprise data into your hands so that you can make better business decisions. We have a global presence, over 500,000 daily users, and our solutions are compatible with over 150 ERPs. For the dynamic space, that's going to be the JET suite of applications, which does include Bizview. And so a little bit about JET. We're not going to cover all of this today, but obviously we'll be going deeper into Bizview. But as for our suite of applications, JET is the most widely used Excel add-in for Dynamics users. The JET suite of products has lived in the Dynamics space for the last 20 years, and JET really is the go-to application for Dynamics users to get more out of their data and make better data-driven decisions. This offering consists of JET Reports, JET Analytics, and Bizview. We won't be covering JET Reports or Analytics today, but if you do have gaps in your reporting and dashboarding processes, know that we do have a very comprehensive solution. a little bit about Jet Reports. This is our real-time reporting tool that lives in Excel and connects directly to your ERP. It lets you quickly and easily build reports directly in Excel, drill down into those numbers, and refresh reports to pull in the latest data. This also eliminates the errors associated with copying and pasting or with other manual exports. The beauty of Jet Reports is that if the data is located in your ERP, whether it's financial or operational, you will be able to access it. Jet Analytics, this is our flagship business intelligence solution that comes in the form of a pre-built data warehouse and cubes. It allows easy reporting and dashboarding in Excel and Power BI or whichever visualization tool that you prefer. And with analytics, users don't have to understand the underlying database schema as it organizes data in plain English or French maybe, which allows users to build out complex reports and dashboards within seconds, regardless of how many fields, tables, or databases that you wish to report against. And then finally, we have Bizview Planning. This is our cloud-based budgeting and planning tool that enhances workflow and lets you build business insights into your planning process. And this is what we'll be covering, obviously, in today's webinar. This slide is, have you outgrown your spreadsheet-driven planning process? And to help answer this question, you can ask yourself three things. Is it a difficult, labor, and time-intensive process? Is it siloed and lacks clarity? And can I do what-if scenarios or models? As organizations grow and more people becoming involved in planning, they find that their old spreadsheet-based planning processes no longer cut it, or their ERP's native planning isn't granular enough to support their needs. They have more people, more input data, or they need to make continuous updates and model various scenarios beyond just one annual budgeting cycle. When organizations rely on manual spreadsheets for planning, budgeting, and forecasting, the planning process becomes overly long, less transparent, and error-prone. As data volumes and number of budget contributors increase, managing multiple Excel workbooks, controlling data entry and approvals, while ensuring the integrity of the data in Excel and avoiding errors becomes increasingly time-consuming and challenging. When planning data is siloed across departments and operational and financial planning processes are conducted in a vacuum, there's no consistent, accurate end-to-end view, and this makes it hard for an organization to pull together to achieve its strategic objectives. When you lack the clarity and flexibility to readily model and test future scenarios, it's hard to plan for different business outcomes, which can mean you run into the risk of incurring unexpected or unnecessary costs or missing out on new opportunities because you're flying blind and forced to base decisions on a gut feel rather than data. So if our solutions for this would be Bizview, and Bizview is a robust web-based planning application that increases cadences, facilitates collaboration, and simplifies processes to drive smarter decisions from more accurate data. With Bizview, you can easily configure planning forms, reports, and dashboards. And when I say planning forms, those are going to be your input templates. So when you have a spreadsheet-driven process with 10 to 60 input templates, we can consolidate that into an automated process. Driver-based models make it easy to extend planning beyond just finance. We know that we have more than just GL budgeting, as there is a lot of drivers in planning and budgeting processes. And Bizview's familiar spreadsheet-like interface offers anywhere, anytime data access on any device without having to manage multiple spreadsheets and versions. With powerful workflows, automated emails, and multi-level approvals, cycle times are shortened to enable continuous planning and rolling forecasts. And we also offer out-of-the-box content and connectors to ensure a fast time to value. Accelerate business growth with collaborative planning. Bizview offers a fast, scalable cloud planning software and a browser-based solution that is specifically designed to facilitate and accelerate planning processes. Bizview can easily adapt to your business processes. It supports the more advanced needs of a mid-market organizations by utilizing modern, flexible technology that lets you handle any number of planning dimensions and easily integrate operational and financial models without sacrificing a level of granularity. You can easily compare actuals to plan for faster and smarter decisions and continuously monitor and reforecast throughout the year. As you roll this out to additional users throughout your organization, it is controlled and governed, so you don't need to worry about unforeseen errors. Bizview has the familiarity of Excel with centralized consolidation. We know that FP&A teams, a lot of them live and breathe in Excel, so we've built a familiar spreadsheet-like interface for ease of adoption, but browser-based for ease of deployment, working off a single central data source for consistency. This also fosters the ability to customize your planning process to drive greater accuracy. And Bizview is also scalable and adaptable to your growing business needs. With Bizview, you can scale and support the needs of growing organizations and improve team output and collaboration by automating tasks and dashboards to maximize productivity, providing intuitive built-in analytics to enable you to track business performance. It also includes automated email distribution to manage approval cycles and time-saving features such as system proposed forecasting and automatic form filling using predetermined spread keys. Extend your planning beyond the office of the CFO and enable the frontline workers who understand your core business to participate in the planning process. And finally, Bizview has the shortest time to value. This is going to be really important for us. We want to set up as quickly as possible for your organization, pre-built content and connectors, easy configuration using Excel formulas, and a shallow learning curve thanks to the spreadsheet-like interface make for a quick, low-risk implementations with a low total cost of ownership. So the slide is really important. It's a list of use cases, and then the number of use cases are almost endless. This is really powerful because not all planning and budgeting processes are the same, and we realize that. We really allow you to fit your current manual planning processes within the planning platform in any way that you want. We have things like payroll, benefits, FTE planning, sales and demand planning. It's not just one type of planning or one type of methodology that Bizview provides. We do think that the possibilities are endless with this platform. And with that, we'll be passing this along to my colleague, Matthew Fisher, and he's going to be able to show you a little bit more about what the tool looks like and show you it in action. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen here.
All right, so let's talk about Bizview. I want to show you guys the interface and just kind of solidify some of the things that Mark was talking about with our Bizview planning platform, okay? The first thing that you'll probably notice is that I'm running inside of a browser. Excuse me. Bizview is 100% cloud or SaaS based. So that means that it runs inside of any kind of browser on any kind of device. And basically there's no setup as far as infrastructure goes. There's no servers to stand up and load programs on. There's no databases to host in like a SQL environment or anything like that. All of that is handled by our cloud ops team in the background. So really all the users need to do is, like I said, log into the system through a browser, okay? I'm parked on my home screen here, and I'm actually just a couple of things before I get into the demo here. I'm logged on as an administrator. That means pretty much I'm seeing everything in the system. I have full access to everything. Bizview comes with its own very robust security setup. So we have the ability to basically dial down anything that you're seeing today via security permissions. Some examples of that might be even at the general ledger account level, we could restrict who sees which GL accounts in the planning process. Also the dimensions that are used in the planning process. You've heard of dimensions in the context of your ERP, probably like Business Central or NAV. Well, we're going to use those same concepts in the planning process, okay? And that's pretty common. You know, usually a planning process is built around your ERP process. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing is we're comparing budget to actuals and we're planning based on actual events and numbers. So it's pretty common to take that same dimensional structure that you see in your ERP and implement it in your planning process. And we can do that very easily with Bizview. Okay. So the reason that I brought that up though is because the dimensions are another example of being able to control things with permissions. Maybe you have a particular department in your organization and you want to split off this process to your different department heads. Well, each one of those department heads will only see the data that's applicable to them. Okay. So I'm on my home screen here. I'm going to concentrate on 5 areas. a couple of them most of the time because they're the most relevant to what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk about input and workflow. Input is the area where we create and maintain what are called budget input templates. Or if you're coming off an Excel-based process, think of them as kind of like an Excel budget or an Excel sheet that you're entering budget information in. Okay, these templates are incredibly flexible and customizable. I like to say during a regular demo, I like to say that Bizview takes all of the power of Excel and wraps it around this CPM tool and makes it a lot easier to share the data and to automate the planning process while still maintaining all of that power of Excel. Okay, and you'll see that when we go into some of these input templates, a lot of them even look, the look and feel is very similar to Excel. Okay. Secondarily, I'm going to go into the workflow area. Workflow is where we take those input templates and we structure them in workflow steps within the system. So another example, department heads, let's say I have a template that I'm sending out to 5 different departments. Mark has department 1. I'm going to create a workflow step that says, send this template to department 1 to Mark's email address, send him a link to it. When he gets done inputting the data in there, he's going to submit it for approval. Again, the workflow takes over, maybe advances to another step with another template and so on and so forth. That's what workflow is going to do for us. Okay? And then I'm going to wrap up by showing just some examples of reports, analytics, and dashboards as it relates to the planning process here. Okay. So let's start out. Like I said, I'm on my home screen. This is a good example of how I can kind of blend different data. I have not only general ledger data, but I've got sales data that I'm pulling in from my ERP, from Business Central, let's say. I can display that on a graph up here on my home screen here. Underneath that are a couple of charts that are kind of showing some kind of system activity, some gauges across the right-hand side there. If I click on this user activity tab, I kind of like this as particularly if you're like a budget manager and you're responsible for several different budget input templates, several different people entering budget information. This is kind of like a bird's eye view of what's going on in the system. Maybe I want to just take a look at a few different users, see what they're doing, see when they last logged in and what they entered and things like that. So it's kind of a nice audit trail that you can keep. So let's start out. I'm going to open up what's called a P&L budget. Okay, this is kind of like our top level budget. In our scenario, we're going to have different drivers-based budgets or templates that feed into this top level budget. Okay. What you're seeing in front of you here, this is called a selection pane. All right. This allows me to select one or more of those dimensions in my system that I was talking about before. I'll just do a select all. And then I can also select a version. Okay? Versioning is very important here. Pretty common ask among planning systems. I want to be able to attach a version number to these templates. And by doing so, I don't have to go through the process of maybe copying one template to another, losing track of which one is current. You know, I'm thinking Excel. If you have an Excel planning process now, a lot of times you're doing that. You're copying the Excel sheets and emailing them off. All right. Well, sooner or later you get kind of lost in that process of, all right, which one is my current one? Which one is my production version, if you will? And which ones are my what if scenarios or my my one-offs and things like that. That way, with Bizview, we can attach versions to these templates to kind of streamline that process. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open this. By the way, I had that one dimension in the system. It's called business unit or unit. If you were pulling in your data from your ERP, which we can interface with, all of your dimensions would show up there. So maybe you would have a department, business unit, maybe even like a project number or something like that. A lot of that would show up in that selection pane for you to choose. Okay. All right, so here's my result budget. It's a P&L based budget. So as you would suspect, I've got general ledger accounts down the left-hand side here. They're all segmented out by the different sections of the P&L. Okay. To the right of that, I've got actuals. Those are coming from my ERP as well. Okay, and Bizview has what's called a jobs engine in which we can set up an automated refresh of your data from your ERP. So, and there's a lot of different ways that we can interface with ERP data. Business Central in particular, we have a very tight integration with. So we can basically go out and grab through an API and through OData, we can grab that data pretty much in real time and then feed it into the planning system. Okay, but I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but just suffice it to say we can interface with any of these systems and pull the data in. So these actuals from my ERP, that's a top level amount. To the right of that is my top level budget amount. Okay. So if I go in and change that, I'll just change that to 45,000. You can see that all of these amounts in my 12 budget periods automatically updated. The reason that happened is because of the spread key right here. Okay, and this is probably one of the most powerful features inside of Bizview is the ability to create and maintain these custom spread keys. All right. Right now I'm selected on last year. That basically means go out to last year's actuals, apply that same ratio to my budget for this year. Okay, but I could also go in, I could choose even. Now those numbers are going to be evenly spread, or I could even create what are called seasonal allocations. So maybe I'm busier in the summer months than in the other times of the year. Maybe I want to allocate more of my revenue to those months. I could do that with a seasonal allocation. I can also go in here and just manually override that spread if the template is will allow me to do that. Okay, you'll notice I just typed the numbers in, that spread key disappeared, and now the budget amount is just accumulating. Okay, so spread keys are a really powerful feature. Let's go off to the right here. I've got what's called a long-term plan here. This is a good example of kind of what I was talking about with the Excel functionality. Okay. In fact, to kind of demonstrate this, I'm going to go into View, and I'm going to turn on my headings and my formula bar. Okay. So for those of you that have a hard time giving up your Excel, a lot of finance people are loving their Excel. I can even turn on my grid lines if I want. Okay. But if I go over here to my long-term plan, basically it's just an index that I'm multiplying out a few years off into the future. Okay. But if I select that cell, you can see that it's calculating that out very similar to how you would do that in an Excel sheet. Okay. All right. So those are my long-term plans. Let me toggle those back off. To the right of that, I've got a show hide area. Basically what this allows me to do is either show or hide different columns or rows within the template. Okay, not unlike an Excel function, hide and unhide columns. Okay, we're doing something very similar to that. It's kind of nice. I like it as if I'm the budget contributor here, if I'm entering the data, makes it nice that I can toggle off parts of the template that I don't want to look at. If I'm just doing the data entry, that's all I want to look at. So I can toggle the other things off, but I can also toggle them back on when I want to look at them. So periods actuals, that's a good example of that. I toggled that on. Now what that did was that toggled these columns on that show me the actual numbers that are going into this top level amount. Okay, and I can go ahead and toggle it back off. Another thing I can toggle on and off are row comments. Okay, I believe Mark mentioned online collaboration as a really that's a pretty common theme throughout all of these Bizview screens. Okay, we want you to be able to collaborate within the tool, it does a couple of things for us. Number one, it makes it a lot more efficient than sending emails back and forth. What if you miss somebody? What if you want to reference content, things like that. But it also makes those comments part of the record. It's part of the budget. Okay, so next year, presumably, we may copy this template off to a new version for next year or something like that. Those comments and that collaboration that can become a part of the record. Okay. So I've got that ability to do this at the row level. I can also comment here at the cell level. Okay, this is kind of like those yellow sticky notes, the comments in Excel. Okay. And I can also, if I go off to the right here, I can display the comments at the template level. So that's the top level amount. Some other things here before I move on to some other examples. I can maintain an audit trail on any of these cells in the system. Okay, this is another pretty common ask that we see among planning users. They want to be able to maintain a record of who's doing what within the system. And you don't have to track this on every single cell in the system. Maybe it's just particular GL accounts that you want to track or something like that. You have the choice of turning it on and off, but it tells you who made an update, when did they make the update, and what was the amount before they changed it. Okay, so that's the audit trail. Okay. All right, so those are some pretty simple examples, kind of basic things that you would see in a top level P&L budget. Let's take a look at some of those drivers-based budgets that feed into this. Okay, let's take a look at maybe some things related to income. I'm going to pull up the sales forecast. The sales forecast just has one input parameter as just a budget version. Okay. So now, instead of GL accounts, I've got customers summarized by region. And then across the top, I've got product that I'm selling. Okay, I'm selling computers here in my demo system. Instead of amounts, what I'm inputting into the sheet are estimated volumes. How many of these units am I going to sell to these particular customers? Okay, and then the system is going to calculate total revenue based on that, and presumably feed that back into that P&L budget at the top level, or maybe even feed it into a top level sales forecast for that matter. We're storing all of this data in a database in the background. Bizview has its own database structure. So that makes it really easy to link these sheets together. I always kind of go back to the Excel budgeting process. Usually Excel users come to us and they say they've outgrown that process. Okay, and one of the things that they've outgrown is trying to share and reference like different sheets within each other. And that can be really cumbersome if it gets to be more complex. If any of that referencing is off, if you break one of those references or one of those links, then you break the whole thing, and it can be very difficult to trace it back. So what we do in Bizview is we store all this data in a database. So it makes it really easy to go out and say, all right, I want to see the product volume for this product for this customer within this budget version on this date. Okay, makes it really easy to retrieve that information and use it in other templates. All right, but for this particular template, I'm deriving estimated revenue. How am I doing that? I'm going to multiply my volume by average price. So I'm just going to toggle that average prices on with my show hide. These average prices, I can change them if the template's set up to allow me to do that. Presumably the prices would be coming from your ERP. Maybe not. It all depends on how you wanted to set it up. These are coming from the ERP, but they're multiplying out and deriving that estimated total revenue. Another thing I kind of like about this particular template is it's set up in kind of like a top-down or bottom-up approach. So let's say I have a product volume target of 20,000 for my Asia region. I can put 20,000 in there, and the template is built to backfill the numbers, okay, according to a particular strategy inside the template. So we can do things like that. So another very common drivers-based budget that we see feeding into a master or just even by itself would be HR and payroll or basically labor forecasting. All right, that's a really common thing. So let's take a look at our employee budget. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to look at what's called employee budget parameters. Okay, so here are 5 different factors that this is a pretty simple sheet, as you can see, but these are related to some of my benefits and deductions in my payroll. Okay, and I've just got percentages that presumably like maybe an HR manager is going to maintain this. And then it's going to be used in the employee budget, which is right here. I'll choose a unit and a version. Here's my employee budget, and there are those factors that you just saw. These can't be changed on this template. They're locked down. And you know, that makes sense. You don't want just anybody changing your FICA percentage or your pension tax percentage or anything like that. You don't want just anybody doing that. You want to control who has access to that. But yet you still want to be able to use those numbers in your planning process. So that's what we're doing here. I've got employees coming from my HR system, a monthly salary cost. Maybe I'm going to hire Anthony starting up in June. And maybe I'm going to give Paul a 3% increase, but that's not going to be applicable until August. Okay? So I can build that kind of logic into this employee budget. It's set up for salary. We can certainly do hourly, union versus non-union and things like that. So within the employee budget. Okay. Oh, let's see. Something else that I find kind of interesting is what's called a rolling forecast. Okay. So what's nice about the structure of these templates is I can set them up to kind of like dynamically render content, you know, based on a couple of different parameters that I feed it, right? One of those parameters in this template is a starting period. I've got it set to June, all right? I'll select my units. I've got versions here that are preloaded, okay? So this is a rolling forecast. Because it's rolling, it's going to take that June as my starting period, and then June through November, these are my forecast numbers. All right, I can go in and change them. The numbers themselves are seeded from my budget numbers that I entered in for those periods. But May through December of last year, going backwards because this is a rolling 12, these are going to be rendered as actuals out of my ERP. Okay? The reason it's going to do that is because of that starting period that I entered of June. If I had entered July, it's basically going to shift all of these off to the left, all right, without you having to go in, make a change to the template, copy and paste, things like that. It's going to dynamically render that content for us. Makes it really nice. Let's take a look at a couple other examples here. Let's take a look at a cost budget. And this cost budget is related to an IT department. Okay, so I've got some regular budget costs that I'm entering. Again, I've got my spread keys that I can use in my templates to do whatever I need to. Down here at the bottom, I can take that top level amount and I can split it off into different allocations, different allocation percentages. This one, because it's an IT services, I've got these different areas that I'm going to split these their budget into to eventually arrive at a unit cost. Okay. This unit cost, then I can use that maybe in my department budgets. Maybe I have a template that I can say, all right, how many support issues do I use on a monthly basis on average? Maybe it's 10. Well, I'm going to charge you $372 per incident. Okay, but that's all derived from this allocation that I set up. Okay. Capital expenditures. This is a pretty common ask as well for a planning process. Okay, I kind of like this template because it lets you input some parameters and then it automatically feeds out that depreciation into the future. Okay, so I've got Bizview that I'm going to buy, and I'm going to buy it in June. Okay, what is it? It's software. Okay, it's going to automatically fill in the useful life, and then also once I enter the quantity, it's going to project out the depreciation and also depreciation, a few years into the future off to the useful life of the asset. Okay, so capital expenditures. All right, so what happens when we have all of these templates? They're all created and we've already figured out who's going to get what. Now we want to feed it into our workflow engine. Okay, so here's an example of that. I've got those business units here as different workflow categories. Okay, you can see each location is listed here. If I was in charge of New York, for instance, just 100, that's the only one that I would see because of my security permissions. Okay, so I can set up things like that. This workflow area, it's all color coded. Anything in green has gone through the whole process and it's approved. Anything in blue, this employee budget here, it's ready to be approved or rejected by the approver. So as the approver here, I can enter comments. I can select file attachments if I want to. I can also open that particular template right from here. Okay, take a look at what's been entered and then toggle back to workflow. Okay. Yellow means it is in process. It's been assigned to the budget contributor, but it hasn't been submitted for approval. So that's going to be in progress, still in yellow. All right. The workflow area, it's actually very powerful. There's a lot of other things that we can do in workflow. Well, just as for instance, this profit and loss, that's a report that gets generated. So basically, once those templates are approved or whatever status you want to trigger the event, it's going to send out a report maybe to a manager or something like that. We can do a lot of other things in workflow, even setting flags in the database in the background and things like that. So workflow is very powerful. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at some other things here. I wanted to show you some examples of reports. Okay. I'm just going to look at a profit and loss report. It's got a similar type of structure here, as in I can set up a selection pane to control what goes on my report. But in the end, it's going to look very similar to the input template. It's going to look a lot like that Excel sheet that I keep talking about. Okay, here's current actuals, my budget, a deviation, and then my actuals from last year. Again, the data is all stored in the database in the background, so I can retrieve it in any way that I want. I can also set up drill to and drill through to the transaction level if I want. If that transaction level detail exists, then I can drill into it. Okay. Here's an example of interfacing with an online, like a document management system. If that document management system, if it's driven off URL, I can very easily interface with that and then go out, maybe look at some supporting documentation that's attached to that. Okay. A couple other features that I really like about particularly the reporting and the dashboarding is the different options you have for sharing the data. Okay. So I went to this share tab. I can export this this report to an Excel sheet, both with or without formulas. I can do the same thing with input templates, by the way. Can export those to Excel, fill them in offline, and then import them back in if I want to. I can also export this report to PDF. Can also click on this share button, and then if I copy this URL, I could paste that into an email and send it to someone. They get the email, they'll click on that content, or they'll click on the link. The system will go directly to the content after authenticating them, making sure they're who they are, and then it goes right to the content. You don't have to navigate, and you don't have to, you know, again, you don't have to worry about sending them screenshots and things like that. It's going to automatically show up. This embedded share link underneath here, this is really handy for sharing content in platforms like maybe a SharePoint site or some other type of website, or maybe even a Power BI report. You can copy this and then embed that content, embed that code into maybe an iframe or something like that. And then it's pretty much real time. It's going to render that content real time. So kind of nice. Let's take a look at an example of an analytics. There we go. This is going to be very similar to like a pivot table, maybe a Jet Reports pivot table that you see in Excel. But I kind of like it because I like how the interface works. I can very quickly drill down. You can see on the bottom here, it's going to expand as my top visuals are expanding. I've got measures and dimensions just like a regular pivot table here that I can work with. And I can also drill in if that transaction level detail exists. I can drill down into it very easily, display it. I could even group it in different ways, filtering. I can even export this drill down into Excel separately. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways I can interact with this data. I've also got that ability to share the content by clicking on that button. Okay. Let's take a peek at a financial planning dashboard. Okay. So this is an example of, again, being able to pull that data in and display it in different ways. I've got that share capability here. I've also got the ability to export this to image. So maybe I want to include it on a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. I could do that. But this is going to behave pretty similarly to what you're used to, maybe a Power BI report or something. I've got slicers here. Maybe I want to stack up my what if scenario next to my budget version, see how those compare with one another. I can do things like that. Okay. So that pretty much includes my high level overview of the Bizview financial planning system. So at this point, Mark, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Matthew. That was great.
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Let's do that.
Okay.
All right, you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, before we get into the Q&A in just a moment, I did want to share with everyone that we do have a promotion going on Jet. This would be for Jet Reports and Analytics. Unfortunately, we're not holding a promotion on Bizview, but I briefly touched on reports and analytics at the beginning of the webinar. So if you were interested in learning more, I did want to make you aware of this. From now until December 20th, we're holding a 10% discount on our foundation packages for Jet Reports and Analytics, as well as a 15% discount on any add-on users or connectors. And if you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to David Doyle to set up a personalized demonstration of Jet, and we'd be looking forward to meeting you there. We also have a webinar next week that Insight Software is holding on December 9th at 2 p.m. There will be a registration link included in a post-webinar email today. And then with that, we can move on to Q&A.
Excellent. Thanks a lot so much, Mark.
Yeah, of course.
So I can see a question in the Q&A panel. So for any of the participants still on the webinar, again, if you want to ask a question, just click on the Q&A icon and type your question in. Now, my challenge with this question is it's too technical for a sales guy to answer. So I'm going to pose it, I guess, to the two of you. The question's from Trisha, and she's asking, how can I get my actuals from Business Central into Bizview, and how often can I refresh them?
Excellent, excellent question. I will take this one, unless you want to take it, Mark.
No, you got it, Matthew.
Didn't think so. Okay. So this is the fun part. I'm the nerdy guy on the call. So these are the fun questions for me. Anyway, we have a very tight integration with Business Central that we wrote. So what we can do within Bizview is we can load up what's called the Business Central connector that does a couple of things for us. Number one, it allows us to directly connect into your Business Central system and basically contact and extract any information that's in there. So it doesn't have to just be general ledger transactional information. Could be sales info, any kind of custom objects, things like that. We can go out and grab those real time. Now, within Bizview, I mentioned that jobs area. That's where we set that up, and we can set up the job to refresh. You know, we can set it up to refresh every 10 minutes if you want. So it's basically would depend on the on your needs and how often you needed that data refreshed.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Matthew.
Sure.
I actually have another question, and actually this is me asking a question, because I know that for a lot of our customers, their budgeting process requires multiple different people in the organization to make submissions to contribute to either departmental or project-based budgeting. And then department managers and divisional managers and all the way up to usually ends with the controller or the director of finance has to bring all of those different submissions together and build what ultimately becomes the budget that gets presented to the executive. What sort of tools or capabilities does Bizview have to help with, you know, sort of making sure all of those different pieces of the budget, you know, can be tracked and people get reminded and all of that stuff rolls up?
Another excellent question. So during my demo, if you recall, the business unit that was in those selection panes, that's an example of dimensionality or accessing dimensions inside the system. And that's really what we're talking about. So think about it in terms of what you were just talking about. Now you have department heads, maybe you have sales managers, maybe you have different projects that you want to segment out. Anything that you're using within Business Central to do that segmentation, any of that dimensionality, or even if it doesn't exist in your ERP, we can create those dimensions within Bizview. But basically any template, we can assign those different parameters to. So for instance, you saw I had a P&L budget. I could select one single department or business unit and send it out, and then it would control access at that level. Or maybe I have particular cost centers and then locations within those, and then departments within the locations. I can set up that kind of dimensionality as well. So very, very flexible in that way.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that answer.
Sure.
I can't believe that our participants are not asking more questions. You must have done an exceptionally good job of explaining how this solution works.
Oh, well, I hope so.
I think it was one of his best. You got lucky.
Awesome. Awesome.
For sure. Either that or they can't figure out how to use the Q&A.
That just means we're going to get a bunch of emails afterward.
That's right, and we can certainly answer them over email too. That's
you betcha.
awesome.
So since I have no more questions, it looks like we're going to end a little bit early today and give everyone, 9 or 10 minutes back to their day. They can start their lunch early if they're out here in Western Canada like me. So I'd like to, first of all, thank you guys, Mark and Matthew, for joining us and doing such a great job with showing us the solution. I can certainly see the value it would deliver to, a mid-market, mid-sized organization. And I would like to thank our participants for joining us today. And as we just sort of joked about, if you'd like to learn more about our services or Bizview or Jet Reports or any of the other products in the Jet suite, and learn a little bit more about how they can help streamline and optimize your reporting or budgeting, feel free to contact any one of us and we'll make sure that we get your questions answered.
Absolutely. Looking forward to meeting each one of you and help you learn more about Jet and Bizview and to help improve your budgeting and planning processes. And a big thanks to Kwixand for setting this up and allowing us to share our solutions.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So with that, I think we can probably end the session.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, please.